Okay, stop talking about Mel Gibson movies.
This is what you sow or reap, my friend.
Mel Gibson podcast.
All right, Jason.
Has Mel Gibson been in any video games? Can we talk about Mel Gibson video games?
Wake up, everybody. Today is Tuesday, August 3rd, and we are Never Free to Play, a podcast where we talk about all the video games we wish we were playing. I'm one of your hosts, Karch and Sean, joined by my co-host, Sean Mybers and Jason Wright. If you decide you like us and you love Mel Gibson, subscribe to us on YouTube and podcast services, or find us on Twitter, where we are at Never Free to Play. If you have questions, comments, thoughts, ideas, feedback, please send it to us at neverfreetoplay@gmail.com. It feels like it's been forever. It's really only been 2 weeks. Actually less, because it's a Tuesday we're recording. This is unusual for us, but Jason ruined some plans.
Yep.
So why don't you go first, Plan Ruiner? You have some big news. I don't know if we can talk about it yet, though.
Nope, can't talk about it yet.
But it's good.
And it's good news, but instead I'm going to issue a public apology.
This is news. Even I don't know what this news is.
Yeah,
yes,
you do. You just forget.
Oh, okay.
But I'm going to issue a public apology.
Friend.
Okay.
This, to all the video viewers, it's out of focus. This is a birthday card for my sister-in-law, Maggie, and I haven't signed it yet, and Lauren's not going to send it till I sign it, and this is going to end up being an apology letter instead of a birthday card. It's about a month late. I'm going to sign it Friday, probably. So,
Wait, who's this going to?
I'm sorry, Maggie. I'm sorry.
Who's Maggie?
It's my sister-in-law. It's Lauren's brother's wife.
Oh, okay. I was about to say, Lauren doesn't have sisters. What are you talking about?
Cousin brother's former roommate.
Cousin brother's former roommate. All right. Now that Jason has just revealed he's a complete screw-up.
How soon do you guys sign cards, huh? You sign it the day of?
Rachel,
Get it out on time?
Rachel is in charge of that, and she's a perfectionist, so.
Okay, so I don't want to put you on the spot, but where's Lauren's birthday gift?
That's your fault, too. You didn't tell us what to get.
I mean, that's true. And to be fair, like I said, Rachel's birthday gift's in our closet.
3-point dunk returned.
Yep.
All right, Sean. What's up with you?
Not too much. Tomorrow is Coast Guard Day, which celebrates the founding of the Revenue Cutter Service, which was one of the precursors to the United States Coast Guard. So the Coast Guard turns 231 years old tomorrow.
Happy birthday, Coast Guard.
What's a cutter?
A cutter is it's a type of ship, but in particular, it's a ship that's used for like enforcing of laws.
All right.
It's a fart in
that
this case.
coast.
So it's Coast Guard term for fart.
The current definition of the Coast Guard is any Coast Guard vessel that is greater than 60 feet long.
Oh, that's a big boat.
Yeah, well, I mean, the previous one I was on was over 280 feet long.
How fast can those go? I mean, and don't tell me in knots. I need to know in like miles per hour.
No.
I have skipped frames. I don't know what that means.
Karch, how you doing, man?
I'm fine. I'm wearing a robe.
Now that I am the first of the co-hosts, I must make sure that you are included in the conversations.
Yeah, it's your job.
I'm glad that's your job.
I can't wait to see you guys in person. That's how I'm doing.
My God,
Counting down them days.
That's
Awesome.
awesome.
Almost a week away. Normally, we would, that's what the banter would have been about on Thursday. It's like, 1 week away before we can record a mini podcast in person or something. I'm not bringing my equipment, by the way. That's not happening.
That's fine. We've learned from my Final Fantasy VII videos that we can do decent audio.
Jump up on that mic.
It won't be acceptable. I will bring everything. I will bring Karch a mic. I will bring my interface. I will bring my camera. We'll just have to record Sean's audio separately because I only have 2 inputs, So
what? I'll go sit in a separate room.
No. You'll be on camera with us. Your mic will just be going to your laptop, and then we'll put it together.
You're the worst. In your pursuit of the best.
Are you going to bring a mic for Robert?
Karch, can you bring your mic for Robert?
Are we really going to... I don't want to talk about this now.
All right. Carry on.
Housekeeping! Like, sub, follow. We got 3 subs this past week. I was going to shout one of them out, but somebody unsubscribed and ruined it for everybody because now I don't know who unsubscribed. How dare you? I know you're unsubscribed, so you're not going to see this. Also, sometimes we stream. We might stream tonight. It might be next Thursday. I mean, who could say? Who could say what's going to happen? You just keep your eye out for when that little live button goes off. Look for that notification. But
Maybe
if you don't catch it live, you can always
3.
catch it on replay. We streamed Resident Evil 8 Part 3 last week. A lot of good jump scares. I would say, I don't know what, like 5, 6, 10 jump scares. They're good stuff.
Okay, let's go. Oh my god! They got me.
Which one of those dolls is alive? You're gonna find out soon. There was just one like 5-minute constant scare.
I would say I don't really count it in jump scares. I count it in the number of times I have to yell at you to keep doing things and to not close your eyes.
Right. Oh, yeah, that's true. At one point, I just closed my eyes and was trying to get them to guide me because I didn't want to see what was on screen. It's good. It's a fun time. Join us on the chat. We're always on there as well. That's all I have. Again, no shout outs because somebody unsubscribed and ruined it for everybody.
They can make it
tragedy of the commons.
Of course, if you want a shout out, ask for one and we'll give it to you.
Oh yeah, that's true. I mean, heck, at this point we have like 53 subs. If you want to be on the podcast, just tell us and we'll probably let you. Like Crimson, you're a lifelong member here, seems like. So you want to be on, you just say the word.
I've been strongly considering reaching out to randos on Twitter who have like similar followings that we do.
People recommend that, but I don't know if I wanna.
I know you're a little snubby, stuffy elitist.
That's true.
Anyway, before we get into the topic of the show, because that's all we're going to talk about today, Sean finally beat Mass Effect 2. He's trailing behind me. And I beat Mass Effect 2, I don't know, like what, 2-3 weeks ago now?
Yeah, something like that.
So we'll talk about that real quick. Great game, Sean?
Great game. Yeah.
Great game.
It's interesting because it's great on character story. It's not actually, it's pretty light on overarching story.
You know what? Honestly, so was the first one.
Yeah.
What is the first one's story other than chase Saren, finds out there's a Reaper, and then win?
Yeah, but like this one literally feels like there's like 3, like you have the 2 like tutorial missions to, like right in the beginning before you get to go do your dossiers, and then it's like 3 missions after that. And that's it
for sure.
So, and they didn't have, because a lot of them were like you go onto like a ship. You're not like going down to a planet, so they weren't quite as involved as I felt like Mass Effect 1's missions. Still, the characters and the loyalty mission setup and having to go like the actual focus for crewing the characters. Fantastic.
Agreed.
That's really what Mass Effect 2 does so much better than Mass Effect 1 is all that. It's you got the bigger crew and every crew member is so much more fleshed out.
Yeah, which is funny because they just kind of don't flesh out your crew members in the first one. Like you can talk to them, but then eventually those dialogue options kind of dry up pretty soon, especially for the non-romanceable ones, which is more than half, I think, depending on your gender anyway.
And then you're just walking up to Rex going, Shepard.
Rex, Shepard.
I got a question for you guys.
Shepard, yeah.
Compare the character development of your crew to, say, KOTOR, because that game preceded the Mass Effect series. So did they take a step back in your opinion, or sideways, or what? And keeping in mind that Mass Effect 2 was a pretty quick turnaround from Mass Effect 1. So I wonder if those development cycles overlap, but at any rate, yeah, speak to that.
I'd say it goes 1 KOTOR, then Mass Effect 2.
Yeah, I'd say 1 and KOTOR are pretty close. Mass Effect 2 is pretty better than both of them.
Yeah.
Pretty significantly better than both of them.
KOTOR never, like I just a second ago, I was complaining about how where Mass Effect 1 kind of like, again, aside from some exceptions, it feels like you can get to know your characters pretty much almost immediately, and then that's it. And then you just bring them on your missions, and then that's it. KOTOR doesn't stop the fleshing out pretty much right up until the end. And then Mass Effect 2, that's the point of the game. Like Sean said, it's a character-driven, like, the point of the game is to go on a suicide mission, and that's your final mission, basically. And so the rest of the actual point of the game is to prepare for that mission, which is find these people. And then you can choose to make them loyal by going on these missions that matter to them. Because again, they might be dead by the time you're done. Nobody knows if they're coming back. And it's important that they get these, tie up these loose ends and stuff.
Yep.
And everybody responds to stuff way more. They learned to just after a mission. Not everybody for everything, but often someone has something to say about a lot of stuff.
Yeah.
And it's just,
really,
good.
the only banter you really got in Mass Effect 1 was on the Citadel elevators. And there after like the beginning of the game, there wasn't a ton of reasons to go back and be in the Citadel.
No, there wasn't, unfortunately.
You could very easily miss a lot of the banter.
They kind of wanted it to be a hub, but it wasn't. And all this to say, you only get 2 returning crew members. And that's not to spoil too much from 1, because it's not like, oh, they're all dead or just never return. It's just the way the story plays out. You only get 2 returning ones, and it's a huge crew. Like I'm in 3 right now, and I'm already like 17 hours in. My crew's only 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 people big, and one of those is a DLC character. And so in 2, you have it's like 10. So
like
that's
10 or
8.
12.
Yeah,
I think it's like 10 base and 12 with the DLC.
Yeah.
How does the combat work for that? I mean, you have all those people.
You still only
you
pick
can only
2.
take 2 of them on a mission.
But because there's a lot more combat, and you get like more chances maybe on even a single mission to like you'll get the prompt to choose people. And what I did, I was just rotating people, just to have the fun of the banter and their abilities and stuff, because it just doesn't matter who you bring with you, because all the stuff that matters is in either dialogue or on the mission that you chose that's specific to them, and then of course they have to be there. So it's not like you're missing out or playing wrong by not bringing your favorite character with you, unless that's just how you want to role play it.
Yep.
So there's no disadvantage in terms of leveling. You don't feel there's enough combat.
No, that's not how it goes.
No, because everyone levels up when Shepard.
You get quote unquote squad
Gotcha.
points. It's a universal thing, and then they all get their own versions of the. They all get their own point pool to split from that. But yeah, I think I mentioned it last time. Just having a really good time with this series. I am flabbergasted at how much I'm enjoying it, basically. And I'm in the middle of 3 right now. I just did a lot of Krogan-related things. That's all I'll say about that for now.
Nice.
Eventually, we'll probably do a spoiler cast, because there's a lot to talk about. And, by the end, I want to... it's a very divisive ending, supposedly, Mass Effect 3. It was not well received. And I want to see how it stacks up so many years removed, playing on this Legendary Edition 1 through 3 right after, I'm experiencing this in a way that maybe many people haven't had a chance to do, if ever, until, of course, the Legendary Edition came out. And, lots of people had already played this game. Some people might have missed it, but a lot of people didn't, and they had played at least some of the series. So it'll be fun to talk with Sean about that. Not Jason, because he won't play it, but...
I'll come in for like the first part. There's no way I'll beat 2 and 3 before.
We could talk about the first 3 hours, the opening mission and your trip on the Citadel for Mass Effect 1.
I got a Sean question before we wrap this up, and any final thoughts he has, of course. So you and I were both very like Mass Effect 1 over Mass Effect 2. I would definitely say not by like a huge margin, and it certainly has its strengths and weaknesses, between the two. But overall, I would say now I do enjoy Mass Effect 2 more, especially after finishing it. How do you compare the two now?
Yeah, I think Mass Effect 1, I liked it from the get-go, and I kind of stayed at that. Mass Effect 2, it definitely grew on me and part of that was probably because it is different from Mass Effect 1, and it's very significantly different. Where I enjoyed it was definitely fights felt even though it's still it's a cover-based shooter, although you and I both played Vanguards, which is a lot less about being in cover.
It's a melee shooter.
They're a lot more kind of mobile and frenetic than Mass Effect 1's, which were very much set up to be just kind of like standoffs.
Right.
And then I will say shooting never felt as tight in Mass Effect 2 as it did in at least 1 Legendary Edition.
It's so interesting. I don't know if I'd say that. I don't know if anybody would say that except
I think shotgun shooting didn't. I think maybe assault rifle felt pretty good.
Yes.
And maybe that has to do with maybe the shotgun had significantly less like aim assist in 2 than it did in 1.
Right. I think you're right about that.
Once I got the assault rifle, I found shooting pretty good with the assault rifle, but the shotgun always kind of felt kind of clunky with me. Which I eventually learned how to offset, and then I got better at using it too. But
right.
It might be worth noting that we're playing on console.
Sure.
You're talking aim assist and all that.
I assumed if I said aim assist, people knew I was playing on console.
Fair enough.
Still too edgy for me. Like, there's this clear tonal shift where, like, this is the cool Mass Effect. And, like, anytime that rears its head, I'm like, shut up. Go away. I don't want edgy, cool Mass Effect.
There was, like, I will say when the Paragon Renegade. So like in Mass Effect 1, Paragon is basically you're doing the like no matter what choice you're picking, your Shepard by and large is doing the right thing. It's just whether it's kind of the like, am I doing the right thing and like the right virtuous thing, or am I doing this and kind of like doing it on my own my own terms, and I'm doing this for myself. There are some definite like, no, you're a little sadistic there, Shepard choices and two. And so it always made the like when the Renegade prompt came up and you could hit that R2 to do a Renegade option, it was always like, am I gonna get like a Mass Effect 1 style Renegade, because those still existed, or am I gonna get like the, oh no, Shepard, that's
Ooh, accidental
I
war
did
crime.
not want you to eat the baby, Shepard.
Yeah,
So it made being Renegade a little like the feasibility of being Renegade a little more hesitant.
right. Like I would paint the entirety of Mass Effect 2 as like a Renegade game. Like even the Paragon stuff feels Renegade. You don't get a choice really. It's kind of jarring if you played the first one as a Paragon and you played it like a straight laced. You just don't really get that option. You do. You can still make the nice guy choices and stuff, but the whole game, has a feel of Renegade to it. The opposite is true so far.
It has like the world is against me. Like people don't believe me. It's like you spend the whole game with a chip on your shoulder.
Right.
It feels like,
which you don't get a choice to determine that, which is funny. I think that like that maybe what the most important choice they could have given you, they take away from you. But overall, like I said, by the time I got to the end, it was fine because you're just kind of going back to saving the world again. And then on the opposite spectrum so far, Mass Effect 3, I feel like no matter what you do, you're kind of playing a Paragon anyway, because like you can't not fight the Reapers. You can't not do everything in your power to unite everybody, because that's the only way this works. And so like even the Renegade stuff is like, let's all work together. It just might be please versus damn it. That's the ultimate difference.
It almost like
if I's punching your leader, I'm going to shoot him in the knee.
Exactly.
it almost discourages me a little bit hearing you guys talk about it, because
don't let it.
Well, I don't want to say the only game that I've ever played. It's like you're pulling the curtain back and I'm seeing the fishing line, and I'm like, okay, those are the puppet strings, versus like something like, and I hate to go back to it because I always do, but the Outer Worlds, I just feel like you have so much choice in how that story plays out.
You don't.
So here's the thing though.
Don't spoil that one for me.
The Outer Worlds character still has, like, despite all your choices, has no personality. Shepard is like is a person with a personality.
Absolutely.
And so, like, I mean, I agree with Karch that you definitely play Shepard with more of a chip on his or her shoulder, but like I found that particularly early in the game, I found it got better as I got later into the game.
For sure.
That like it was, and which was nice because there's a final decision that kind of set, that you can say either a little bit of I'm with you or F you with Cerberus, who the people who you were working for the game, who were an organization you fought in the first game. And so like I kind of felt it was for me it was Shepard finally kind of throwing off their yoke, and now I'd be like, all right, I had to play it safe and I had to figure out my place in this world again because of what happened to Shepard.
That's interesting to hear you say that, because, and this is just a personal preference, but one of your criticisms of The Witcher as a role-playing game was like, well, they kind of defined that character for me, and I didn't get to pick what my approach was or what my personality was. And I feel that with Skyrim. Like, if you said, what's the personality of the main character of Skyrim, I'd be like, well, it's whatever you want it to be. I'd say the same is true for Outer Worlds. Whereas with this, it seems like the developers
this does a better job of it than The Witcher. Like it's still, I still feel like this is my Shepard much more than
and that's
sure. my Geralt.
That's the beauty of this game, is that you can see the strings. Like it's not hard to see it, and yet even still they pull you in. Like unless you've played this game like 20 times, you won't feel lesser for knowing that at the end of the day, these are some pretty binary choices, and they're going to have to push the story in a certain direction anyway. Like everything comes together. It's the ultimate dungeon master trick.
Right. Exactly. I let you guys think you're going to make a decision, but I planned out how this is going to end, and you're going to get there one way or the other.
Mm-hmm.
Lilac.
But they do. But Mass Effect. BioWare with Mass Effect does a better job of that than honestly I think any game has done.
For sure. And
I
usually don't like
it depends on what their intention is too. You have to.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, to be fair, like that might not.
No
have
one's
been what
comparing.
CD
You're the only one bringing in Skyrim and The Witcher and Outer Worlds. Like no one's comparing them to the other ones except you, like calling them better or worse.
I'm not saying they're better or worse. I'm just. It's Sean's perspective. I was just interested in.
I see. Okay.
I would happily replay through the Mass Effect trilogy than play Witcher 3.
He's gonna replay Mass Effect 2 tonight, folks.
Are you going to start 3 right away?
No, he messed up a romance option.
I was honestly
That's true.
I was sitting there with like around 30 minutes before we were gonna meet up, and I was like, I could just import my character and get through the opening scene. And I was like, no, if I do that, I'm not going to show up to the podcast tonight. So
It's a pretty long scene.
I'll probably start. I may not start tomorrow because tomorrow's date night with the wife. But now that we're doing this on Tuesday and that opens up time on Thursday, I may start Thursday. But we'll see. I got a lot of stuff I got to do around the house. I didn't have a very productive weekend last weekend because I exhausted myself hiking in 95-degree weather before the heat index.
All right. Well, Mass Effect 2, great game. Perfect. We'll see. Time will tell. I'm mulling on that one.
We'll talk about that too. Yeah, once we get to the spoiler cast.
Sure. Exactly. Cool. All right. On to the topic of the show. Drink break.
Drink break!
All right. Now it's time for the topic of the show. We're going to talk about something I wanted to talk about for a really long time, and it didn't feel right until recently when I acquired my little Retroid Pocket, my $100 Game Boy Chinese knockoff. That runs a bunch of old games, ROMs.
Hey, can you show it to us on the video?
I don't have it with me.
Okay.
I could go get it.
Poor
No,
planning.
it's fine.
All right. It looks like a Game Boy Advance, but different.
It does.
Not the SP though. The stupid old one.
Harder edges.
Harder edges, but more
You've
bossy.
shown it once. I just didn't know if you happened to have it right there.
I did not. Sorry. But yeah, so this obviously brought to the front of my mind the topics of specifically emulation, piracy, and game preservation, and how they all kind of relate to each other. With one, emulation is emulators technically. It's a gray area. It's usually freeware. It's usually not illegal in almost any sense. It's the game itself that is always sticky. It's like, oh, do you own this? Then you can have the digital backup. Some publishers and whatnot think that that's not true, and then that's where the gray area comes in. And of course, game preservation is, it's no different than preserving any kind of media for the sake of a culture and humanity. We preserve films and books, and we add them to the Library of Congress and whatever the heck that means. I don't even know. I just know that it's important at that point that it's been deemed, worth preserving. And so all these kind of go hand in hand, and we've all had our history with it a bit. And I just want to talk through that. Is it good? Is it bad? Do you do it? Have you done it? Are you going to do it more in the future, less in the future? Steam Deck kind of throws its hat into the ring on this and changes things. And we can talk about publishers and platform holders and their takes and stances. So, Jason, what's your emulation piracy history?
I used to be really big into it, just because, especially in college, I didn't own a console, and so a lot of times that was the only way I could go back and play some of these older games that and like you said, I owned a lot of them physically, but I wasn't going to bring my Super Nintendo to college.
Or at one point.
Say what?
Or at one point. That's the excuse I give myself. Yeah, I don't have it anymore, but I used to.
Yeah, sure. I paid money to that for the publisher at some point. So yeah, I used to emulate Super Nintendo and N64. I think are the only ones that I actually ever did. But I'll say this out loud because catch me if you can. But I've pirated games that I was like, well, I don't know if I'm gonna like this or not. Like I pirated Skyrim, but I've bought it 4 times since then. So like, in my opinion, that benefited Bethesda if anything. Because I own it on the Switch twice. I own a physical copy, and you bought me a digital copy. I own it on the PC. I own it in VR. I probably will buy it again at some point in my life. And here's the thing, to me, as unethical as it might sometimes seem, I really do feel that sometimes it's the only thing that motivates companies to do the right thing. And I have some examples. Sony, so Xbox was first to, if I recall, this was like circa 2014, 2015, they put out their remote play app where you could have a PC. If you owned an Xbox, it would remote play to your device. It could be a Windows device or whatever. It could be a laptop. So most laptops won't run Windows, obviously. And that was exciting. That was awesome. But I had a PS4, and I was like, gosh, I hope they bring this to something I own. Well, at that point in time, Sony was still in the market of making phones, and so they did have a remote play app, but they only allowed it to be used on Sony devices because they wanted to push Sony hardware. Mm-hmm. I wasn't going to go out and spend literally, $800 to $1,000 on a Sony device just to do remote play. And I had the Vita, but it honestly didn't work that well. So
yeah,
there was an open source Android app that you had the APK for. It was not cracked from Sony's software. It was a totally ground up developed app that allowed you to remote play PlayStation 4 on any Android device. And it was like $1 or something like that. Mm-hmm. And I remember they did not do a cease and desist, to Sony's credit, until they had their own app. But I do really feel like that was the push that Sony needed to say, okay, well, the market's demanding this. People want this. There's a demand for this. And the same goes for piracy. And sorry to keep kind of just droning on here, but if you look at, Steam, I think PC piracy was a little more rampant back in the day, and Steam took a look at it and say, well, how do we compete with free? Well, we compete with at that time, no DRM, easy.
You compete with convenience.
Exactly. And that's exactly what they did. They made a very convenient platform to get everything, and you buy it once, and you own it forever, and it works infinitely forwards compatible, and that's it. Like, I have games on there that I've owned since 2007, 2008. It's amazing. And I just, like, why even bother pirating at this point when I could just go buy a game on Steam for $5? So that's my take on it.
So you mentioned
on the flip side, though. On the flip side, it hasn't entirely worked because, as is often the case when we talk about these things or anything, is Nintendo.
No, they're special.
Nintendo is literally shutting down ROM sites. Now one's of a very questionable nature, but the Switch eShop is terrible for classic Nintendo titles.
It is, and not the third party ones, even their own. Like, yeah, you can't play you can. You can play Super Mario Brothers 3 or 1, 2, 3, but like it took a long time. And then this is the first time where maybe the next Nintendo console, you won't have to repurchase it. You'll just have to continue subscribing to the service, because aside from up until then, like they've released Super Mario Brothers on the Super Nintendo in the form of that one collection, which everybody loved, to be fair, because that was the first time anybody had ever done something like
Mario
that.
All-Stars.
All-Stars, yeah. And then they released it again on Game Boy Advance. And then they released it again on the Wii U Virtual Console. And then the Wii Virtual Console, and then the Wii U Virtual Console. So, and I'm sure I'm missing somewhere else. I'm sure this game has been released
probably
like 3 more places that I'm not even thinking of. Never phones, though. Go figure. But yeah, Nintendo sucks. Is my short answer to that.
They definitely have the worst take on how to do this sort of thing. They don't care about competing with free, honestly. They're of the mind of like, we'll shut down anyone who's trying to utilize our IP. Like, we don't care. We're not going to succumb to the pressure. It's just a matter of, we'll do what we want to do on our time frame.
Right. And you know what? To be fair, they all suck. Nintendo has the largest concentration of IP that they own that they can release to us in an easily obtainable format that we can pay for, and then they don't. And then they always they put one step forward or 2 steps back. Like, Sony's got a decent amount, and they've put some of it out, but they don't. Square's got a lot, but they love to re-release and upcharge on mobile for like $20. Like those pixel perfect Final Fantasy 1 through 6 that they're doing right now. I think some of them are like, the minimum's like 12 and the max is going to be like $18. I'm like, I'm sorry, but just no. You can't keep doing that. I'm not paying for that.
I think you have to look at the market forces and ask yourself, if you were in their shoes, why does this exist? Because if they gave us an alternate solution that made more sense, this would not exist. No one would do this. But they don't, and that's why this exists.
What is this? I'm sorry.
Emulation in general, or piracy in
course.
general.
Mm-hmm.
Like, there's a reason why those things exist in the gaming sphere, and it's because the companies don't give us a better alternative.
For sure. So, you actually said you pirated Skyrim. That was during like its launch window?
Yeah, I pirated Skyrim maybe a year or so or less after it launched on PC.
Because that's something I've never done. All of my piracy has always been on games at least like 10 years. Not that I had like a hard, fast rule, but because the machines that I had could only handle older games.
Yeah. Well, and
go ahead.
I just want to defend myself a little bit.
I'm not asking you to defend yourself. I was just double checking.
My brother, so it's a funny story. My brother Greg owned this game on PlayStation 4 or PlayStation 3, sorry. And his friend Jordan also owned this on PlayStation 3, and they would play it in the same room. I was home for Christmas break, and I was like, ooh, I want to play this game with you guys, but I don't want to pay another $60. We've already in this room spent $120 on this game. And so, yeah, I pirated it.
Gotcha. Okay, but let's swing back because we kind of skipped Sean a little bit. Sean, what's your history with emulation, if at all?
I got nothing.
Nothing.
I mean, does the Game Boy player and the Super Nintendo count as emulation?
Absolutely not. Oh, wait, I mean, yes, technically that is what it is, but it's not the kind that we're talking about.
In terms of what we're talking about, no, I got nothing for you.
Okay.
I've never done it. I don't have any piracy that I
was
that
that
I can,
mostly
I
out
can
of a
recall.
desire to do good, or rather not evil, I should say, or was it just because you just didn't feel the need to?
It was I felt squeamish about doing it because don't get me wrong, during those periods, like there were definite periods where it's like I would like to go play certain games or especially games that I could have pirated that I couldn't play because I didn't have the consoles at the, I until the PS4 I've never owned a PlayStation.
Mm-hmm.
There were times where it's like it would be nice to go play some PlayStation games, but it was always like, well, if you're gonna do that, go buy a used console and go find a used copy, which
Right.
I never did. But
Right.
I just
Cool. Okay.
yeah.
So short and sweet. I like it. So for me, I remember I went to a friend, so we'd hang out all the time. His mom would watch us sometimes, my sister and I, and so we'd hang out and hang out with him all the time. And he had a computer in his room. He had a full like decent desktop. They all the kids did because the dad worked. He could get his hands on computers cheap. And that was my first experience. Where it was like, how are you playing this game? And I don't remember if like understood what his answer was, but that was like, Z-SNES or whatever it was called, was the first emulator I ever saw. He was playing Super Nintendo games on a keyboard. I was like, this is crazy. And it wasn't until years later that I figured it out myself. But even still at that point, I think first of all, it was so easy. Like to find the emulator and the ROMs, I was like, I didn't have to do anything, especially then. These days it can be a little trickier, especially if you go to like higher end stuff like, Wii or even PlayStation 1 can be kind of complicated. But to get the emulator, to get the ROM, put them in a folder where it knows it is, and just boom, you have Super Mario World, Super Mario RPG, all those amazing Super Nintendo games at the tip of your fingers. A console I missed out on and desperately wanted to play, but wasn't about to go just spend, $1,000 essentially on old console hardware and games and cartridges and stuff. And also a time where like there was no like hint on the horizon of any way that these games would be coming back in a way I could pay the publisher. I would always be paying somebody else who paid for them years ago. Nintendo was never, ever going to see money for these titles again, as far as I was concerned. And maybe even as far as they were concerned, they were never going to see money for those titles again. Of course, they held on to them because eventually they knew somehow they would be able to milk them again. And sure enough, they did. But like, there was no streaming. There was no back compat. It just didn't exist. And there was no hint of it ever existing. So to me, it was just like it's kind of a tired argument. It's like, I'm not hurting anyone, but I literally wasn't. There was no way in the next 10 years even I was ever going to be able to do this quote unquote the right way. Because like, and I'm going to skip to it here before we even get to solutions. Like, in the eyes of a publisher, is there a difference between piracy and used game sales?
That's a really good question. I don't know.
So it probably comes down largely to when does it occur? So like the game just came out and someone was able to upload the entire game on the internet and people are downloading it is very different than someone downloading a game 5 years after it was released. Because if it's easy to get a hold of a copy of the game online right when it releases, that could be significant lost money for the publishers. Yes, it's like right now with CD Projekt Red, where they have that concern, and I don't remember if they ever we saw the resolution of it, but the source code of Cyberpunk getting essentially that getting hacked from them.
Oh,
and
I don't remember
they're
that.
concerned about that being released.
Now that's a little different because you just spoke from a purely digital perspective. You can't sell digital games, and you can't technically buy used digital. Like that doesn't exist. I know there are some shady key dealers out there,
but the point being is, used game means the publisher at some point got paid for the game,
right? But then they didn't get my money when I bought it from you.
True.
And I could have done. And you can beat a game in 8 hours and sell it to somebody.
Yeah, I mean that's
GameStop,
that's been GameStop's. Essentially the cornerstone of their business, and for basically the entirety of their existence. But
but there was a time where publishers, I think Nintendo specifically, but I'm sure more than, and it has to be true for like certain movie distributors as well. Rental places like Blockbuster just drove them crazy. They're like, "What do you mean you what? No!" But then thankfully, common sense and the laws, at least back then, were on our side. It's like, of course you can.
That's taken us into somewhat of the debate of why there was hesitant. Let's face it. No one disputes the fact that digital is the more convenient way to get a hold of your games.
Sure.
But it was that fact of yes, but if I own a copy of the game, I own I can do stuff with it. It is mine to sell and do what I wish to do with. Where you've lost that, which is admittedly puts a bit of I think emulation. In I guess 20 years, emulation of the last couple generations is going to be kind of interesting because of the fact that there's not that physical market to kind of that kind of gives you to sit there and say, yeah, I can emulate Link to the Past because I got a cartridge of Link to the Past gathering dust. Now, admittedly, my Super Nintendo doesn't work, but I have the cartridge of Link to the Past. It's going to be a lot different than saying, oh, I'm emulating Skyrim 20 years later, even though I can't show you that I have a physical copy of Skyrim, and oh, by the way, Steam is defunct now, so I can't even prove that I owned a digital copy of Skyrim.
How dare you? Don't say that. I've bought Skyrim so many times, I'll play it wherever I want.
Fair. Jason, do you have any thoughts on that comment?
Well, it's interesting you bring into account just like the overall, almost like the morality of piracy versus the legality of piracy. And it's so funny because I remember like growing up and having like access to Kazaa and LimeWire and just having this kind of philosophical discussions on like what do you feel like this morality versus legality, and there's the gray area because you're not technically you're stealing nothing. It's zeros and ones and who owns that, but I just go back to like.
But we've shown those zeros and ones are worth something because we all pay for them all the time now.
I just go back to like it's funny because a lot of people who have that perspective would also be the same generation that had a cassette tape and would record their favorite song when it came on the radio, and then like okay, but they didn't buy the record. Is that stealing?
Right, but
piracy.
But you had access to the radio, like. It's like what is this weird arbitrary limitation that I have to like I'm at the mercy of the radio. I can't record it on a cassette. That would be like saying DVR should be illegal. Why would DVR be illegal? No one ever thought that. I'm just showing different viewpoints.
It's weird to think about. Like I put Willy Wonka on our cloud DVR for YouTube TV.
Mm-hmm.
I mean. If you just think about the basics of it, like I did not pay for that movie, but I guess there's some trickle-down effect. Me paying Google, paying whomever for that. I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
It's just weird. It's weird to think about. And you're talking about like pirating something, but you don't really physically own it. It's very complicated. It's a very complicated issue, but then I always circle back to, that's what the market's demanding, and I mean, and right, wrong, or indifferent, as an intellectual property holder, you have to look at that market and say, okay, what product can I provide to my customer base that fills that need? And I bet you if you looked at music piracy numbers since Spotify and Apple Music and all those services came out, I bet you it's plummeted.
Probably.
And just, I mean, because like that competes with free. And like Sean said, that's convenience.
Yep.
So I appreciate the market pressures that this sort of dubious endeavor puts on content holders, because otherwise, what's going to make them do the right thing?
The fact that people are like the fact that a Steam could, or like let's not go with Steam. Let's go with like a Netflix could come along, and that convenience, but people were willing to pay for it. Also hints at the flip side though, which is that there was, for a lot of people, there was an underlying uncomfortability with this, that once you gave them a convenient, not excessively priced option, they jumped at it because they would rather do that than and then feel slightly squeamish that they might be on the wrong side of either morality of the law or the law.
For sure. Like
I want to be totally honest. Occasionally, I'll still pirate a movie, because if I'm paying for Hulu and Netflix and HBO and Disney Plus and Apple TV and all these things, and I can't watch like the one frickin' movie that I want to watch, then like, I mean, honestly, at that point, I'm like, whatever. Somebody's getting my money somewhere. I should be able to watch this, and I just do it anyway. Like,
yeah, I mean, it shows it again, like you said already, so I won't get through it, but it shows. So I'll only talk about it from the perspective of how can these big corporations do better or differently to prevent you from doing that? And the answer is, get your act together. Why are movies licensed to certain streaming services differently across the world? Why are videos blocked in, like what, this kind of stuff? They need to get their head out of their butt and figure out how one company can deal with one company globally and across maybe their entire platform. Like this whole weird, like it doesn't make any sense to me. This wheeling and dealing of like every single tiny little piece is up for grabs from every single tiny little sector of the industry, basically. Like Netflix grabbed this time, and this time it was Hulu, and this time it was HBO, and or this time it was two, but not that one over there, but only in France. And it's like none of that makes any sense, and it's frustrating. And of course it's going to blow up in your face. Like you're doing it, presumably they're doing it to try to make more money, but I can't see how that's actually true in the long run. But what do I know? Nothing.
So you want to talk solutions?
I wanted to talk preservation, but before that, I wanted to talk. Oh, what was it? Oh, it kind of goes in hand with preservation. So gaming is a stupidly young medium compared to, obviously music is thousands of years old. Recorded music's probably the oldest. Then not too far behind it, you've got movies. Books before that too, obviously. And like these things are universal in a way that even video games, despite how popular they are, just can't even kind of touch. And so like the need to preserve them is stronger, but it's also so much easier. And we've talked about this a lot before. Like preserving games is very difficult. It is not easy due to the nature of digital hardware, or hardware that, plays these digital things, software, blah, blah, blah. And so like, does that play into anything like you think on the subject at all? Like the difficulty in which it is, I'm having a hard time saying this, but like my DVD player and like up until VHS was the first home video thing, and that lasted forever. And then DVD came along, and then finally we have digital. It's just like nothing doesn't play a movie. There will never be something that doesn't play a movie as long as it's been digitized. I can watch Gone with the Wind for all eternity. That is not necessarily true with Super Mario Brothers even, except for the fact that I have emulation on my side. Like what is this weird difference in which
it's the proprietary, right? So
I don't know,
and every medium, like cassettes beat out whatchamacallits for for playing music, right? and then Blu-ray beat out DVD HD. DVDs beat out Laserdisc. There's one medium. Every movie comes out on Blu-ray. Every
VHS
movie
beat Betamax.
Betamax, ain't you?
But see, now the thing is,
but
there's
that doesn't exist for gaming. There's no
it does though, because
there's
everything's
Xboxes.
digital now. Everything's digital now.
But not the way that it came up though. Like it's almost a unique way that like every console has come out up until we got to CD consoles where now everything basically if it takes a disc it uses a Blu-ray player. But like you remember like the cartridges on not just between like a Sega and a Sega Genesis and a Super Nintendo, but even between the NES and the SNES, like that technology is totally different. Xbox 360 was the sole reason that they had to continue to make, or Philips had to continue to make DVD HD hardware and disc, because it used that instead of Blu-ray. It wasn't until the Xbox One generation that the actual hardware to read this stuff finally is now all the same.
It's true. I guess, and
now you're right. Now it's all digitized. But you're talking about really one generation of gaming.
That's true.
We're just now on the second console where that's the case.
That's
Whereas like movies were pretty much it was let's face it, nothing survived competing with VHSs very long, and then VHS was dominant until DVDs came along, and DVDs beat out. Each of those was dominant for the majority of their time. We've been fighting this battle, and it wasn't until basically 10 years ago that it's kind of now settled up.
That's true. I guess it just goes back to it being such a young medium, and and then like it occurred, like IP rights and copyright law in this country is kind of busted. At least that's my opinion on it. Mickey Mouse only just in the next couple of years going to finally be like, public domain, and Disney's going to...
And that assumes Disney doesn't get the copyright laws changed again like they have in the past.
I think they've missed the boat. I don't think it's going to happen.
Probably.
I think they are locked in, but what Disney's going to do is they're going to use their immense influence and cash to make sure that it doesn't matter. No one is ever going to use that property in a meaningful way outside of parody, which is already mostly protected.
Yep.
But no one's going to make a Mickey Mouse movie and be like, oh, I didn't know it was Disney and it made $1 billion. Like, that's not
man, you just brought up
happening.
a really good point. We could circumvent everything. All we have to do is put some sort of like inappropriate icon at the beginning of the game. That's now parody.
Yes,
now
that
we
is
can
exactly
emulate
how
everything.
that law works. Very good.
Yep.
Jason's the solution right there. But yeah, so like it's going to be really interesting if I'm still alive for, I don't know, we'll call Pac-Man. That's a pretty old, it's not the oldest game, but it's a very old game. Pac-Man goes to public domain. Like what's that going to look like when video games start, like I can't even imagine a world, but.
Will it matter?
In what way? What do you mean?
Like let's say, the thing about games and where we are in technology is everything moves so fast. I mean, at this point, the I mean, and you can say this about any media, but like the dead franchises and that exist in gaming are countless. Yeah. Now, I mean, Nintendo, is kind of the exception here, and then really Square.
Yeah,
but
you're right.
There's not a lot of really long-lasting video game series, and I guess somehow, Metal Gear Solid ended. I mean, that's presumably done, but
like Final Fantasy, I don't know. Yeah, I guess you're right. I guess it's like you could count them on one hand, and then again, when you add 75 years to that, what does it matter anymore?
Yeah, it's like is cloud going to be relevant? In 2072. Is it going to matter that people can now use Cloud Strife?
Of course they will, because Final Fantasy Remake Part 3 will only have just come out, Sean.
Well, I think the
bad
heart
example.
Of your
You got
question,
me.
I think the heart of your question is what part does emulation play in preservation? Because in a lot of cases, we've seen games get lost to like the publisher just lost the source code. Now, no one could ever have that game. That's not in the Library of Congress. Like, we've just lost that game. You've seen digital marketplaces shut down. We've seen publishers pull games off of digital marketplaces and say, well, if you own it, you can download it only to this date, and then you can, then it's gone forever. And PT is a great example, right? So,
fresh.
In terms of preservation, what part does emulation play? Obviously, it's a legal fringe, but it plays an important role in preservation where intellectual property holders don't want to do their part to preserve their own content. And then how can, I mean, I don't know, I'm not talking the legality side, but how can you be mad at a fan base for wanting to preserve what they love? Like,
I don't think you can preserve it. I don't think preserving digital media is going to work.
Just too much of it.
We're generating too much of it, and all of like, yeah, a hard drive goes bad after a handful of decades.
Yeah, it does.
Like it's just not going to work.
But you know,
you're going to have to pick and choose select things, which is what mankind has always done.
Right.
You know, the defining games will get preserved. 99% of the games will be forgotten.
A sad truth, and you know, but an inevitability. But
and so
it would be nice to be
think,
able to choose or have some say in, like, you know, just be even if it's just like a niche subset, like, this is important to us and it's something we want to pass. Again, as dumb as that sounds, like, Pac-Man is my life. Harvest Moon must be played by my grandchildren. You know, these kinds of things. These are important to me, and I want to share them with them someday. But I don't get to. You know, like, it's taken away from me in a way that I don't feel is right. And I don't know. But you're right. You're not wrong. I
agree.
It's a hard thing to do.
There's games that I'd love to think that I could share as a, not that I would be a grandparent, but of a grandparenty age.
Mm-hmm. To the youngins.
But at the same time, I'll get to share, you know, the general joy of gaming.
Sure. That won't go away, hopefully.
Which, you know, and what we've seen in our lifetimes, the way games come, I can only imagine what games will be like in 40 years.
Right. It's crazy.
All VR beamed straight to your cerebellum.
All right. I'm tapped out. I'm done. No VR.
You're not tapped out. We got to talk solutions.
No. I meant of, like, this life where VR has become the only way to play games.
I mean,
anyway, yeah, solutions.
I'll see you guys on the Elder Scrolls server.
No, you won't. What did I just say?
I'll meet you there.
Solutions. Do we need a solution?
We need a solution.
We need a solution. Okay, what's the solution?
At the very, very least, we need a solution for backwards compatibility in the digital age for exactly what we talked about, those high-profile games that we're going to preserve. We need an easy solution for that. Because not all publishers and hardware manufacturers approach that the same way.
They don't.
Do we need a solution because we want to be able, like, we specifically want to be able to play the game, or we need a solution because we want a historical record of games?
I to think. Go ahead, sorry.
I was just gonna say, selfishly, I just don't want to lose access to something I've already paid for.
Like,
when my PS4 stops being
Karch is the exception here. Karch will go back and play games plenty of times, and you know, but like for me, excluding Skyrim because I'm addicted to it,
which is still a modern game. It's the most recent.
Yeah, but you and I, Jason, like, do you really go back and play that many old games?
I want the option. If I've already paid for it, I don't want to lose access to it just because my
paid for it and got
Jason,
your fun out of it.
I'm starting to lean the other way just so Jason doesn't feel beholden to things we know he can't even play games he hasn't played yet, let alone games he's never played or that he already has played.
Like I paid $60 for Halo back, which I didn't. I think I got that with the Xbox. But you get my point. I paid $60 for a game. I played the game. Yeah, honestly, if Mass Effect Legendary Edition had ever come out, I never would have gone back and played Mass Effect. I love the games. I love the heck out of them. But like, I got my money's worth out of those games. It's very rare games that I have much of an interest in go back and playing. I understand the desire to want to be able to, but I don't think it's not a real thing you're going to do.
What a perfect example of something. This isn't a solution related thing. I guess it kind of is as part of the solution.
If we had fans, they would hate me so much.
They probably would, but they'd hate all
corporate shill.
He's such a shill. What a shill. What a government boot neck. Blah blah. I got nothing. Okay, so you just a perfect example of why I think none of this is really a big deal, and it's all an illusion. As far as like, oh no, it's a problem, and we have to protect our IP. You just said. I believe you because I've been in this situation too. Even if I am the replay kind of guy, you said you would never have touched the Mass Effect series again because it wasn't in the zeitgeist anymore. There was no compelling marketing push to remember and pull at those nostalgic heartstrings, etc. And that would also, and to be fair, it looks better. It's all packaged nicely in a way that it never existed before. And they didn't take Mass Effect away. I mean, you still had to pay for it, obviously, but you could buy it cheaper if you wanted to. But like the percentage of people who had never played it or wanted to play it again but didn't have access to it, who woke up and said, I ain't paying for that Legendary Edition, but then went and bought the old cheap ones, is probably like...
Or played them on Game Pass.
Yeah, that's true. There is a small wrinkle in that, I suppose. But we're probably talking 1 to 0.01%, like, which is...
I mean, honestly, I don't care. If I'm paying $60 for something, I want it in perpetuity.
I understand that philosophically, but in practice, it's a pointless argument. I think Sean
it's not
kinda...
a pointless argument. I paid money for a product, and I want it to be there. It's digital.
But that's a philosophical, like you're just talking about ownership rights, which is like, yes, those you should have ownership rights forever, in my opinion. However, practically, it's pointless because you're never going to use them in a meaningful way.
I probably play Super Mario World once
for
a year.
most of it. And so
I'm just saying.
So going back though, like I feel like if you just let people have access to, whether that's very cheaply or even free, to the original versions of these things, you could still continue to pump out these remakes and these remasters and these reboots and never suffer at all. You'd have such
what they're doing.
But they're not. That's the thing. They're not doing
Some of
that.
them aren't. I would say Mass Effect's the exception here.
I disagree.
I mean, we're getting ready to see Advance Wars. Advance Wars, all 1 and 2 were both on the Wii U store, and now we're getting the remakes with no convenient way to get the old ones.
Right. I don't know I don't exactly know what we're debating here, but I do feel like there has been a resurgence of HD remasters in the past 5 years. You've got Wind Waker HD, you've got Skyward Sword HD, you've got
and you can't get the originals anymore. That's the point.
And my point
I feel like
is
we've
that
swapped arguments.
My point is that you're right, Jason. We have seen more of them. My point is, if the original had always existed available easily, that they still could have released Wind Waker HD and seen nearly identical sales numbers.
Yeah,
because
Karch's point is using Mass Effect as evidence that even though
from
Mass
Sean's
Effect 1, 2, and
perspective,
3 were very are cheap and easily accessible. Because they're not that old, and I mean, Microsoft has basically got their entire 360 catalog on their Series catalog now. But that probably had negligible impact on the sales of Mass Effect Legendary Edition. And so Karch is making the point that if you continue to make the original copies of games, and I think we're largely talking storied, the percentage of games that are actually that are big games, but it doesn't really matter. If you continue to make the original ones available, and especially available at a discount, and I think we're probably working towards the argument of even making them free, the remasters would still be would still sell probably just as well.
I don't disagree.
A non-existent disc. It's almost like the fact that like you go into bookstores and they sell Romeo and Juliet. And these nice bindings of Romeo and Juliet, where you could go to Project Gutenberg and download Romeo and Juliet for free because it's in the public domain, but people will still buy nice bound versions of Romeo and Juliet by doing that.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, I'm with you. I guess all I'm saying is that if I spend $60 on a copy of a game, I want to be able to. I want that to be infinitely forward compatible.
I totally
in
agree.
2021, right?
I totally
agree. That's all I'm saying. So and that doesn't mean I'll never buy a remaster either, like what you're saying. So I don't know. I see no downside, and while we talked about kind of getting to solutions, I think to me the Game Pass model is the perfect solution. And is it not the perfect solution to all things video game related? But you've got all these IP stranded on old hardware. I see no downside, but using games like that as padding for a streaming service.
But the Game Pass model creates the same exact problem you talked about earlier with like the fact that you have Netflix and HBO Max and Hulu Plus.
It does.
I don't want to do that. If we're talking about preserving games for the sake of history, I want something like the Wayback Machine or the Library of Congress, maintaining these games, with an emulator so they're actually playable. But I also don't have an interest in playing them. So, there's a difference here between me personally when it comes to wanting to maintain, old games and play them versus me wanting a history standpoint.
I think I'm coming at it from a strictly consumer perspective. I think
you're coming at it strictly from a personal perspective.
Yeah, personal, not even
It's an
consumer.
individual perspective, not a the only part of this that I particularly have a bit of care about is the historical perspective.
I'm just saying, if I buy something digitally, I should be able to use it forever, and that's
Agreed.
Why?
Period. Why? Because I paid money for it.
But you got your money's worth out of it when you played the game originally.
Who's to say what I think my money's worth is? I mean, in my opinion, if I paid for something digitally, it should be there for forever. If I paid for a digital copy of a song and it's an MP3, I should be able to listen to it forever. There should never be a point at which they're like, oh, this is now only available in MP6 and no other old hardware will ever play this song. So if you want to listen to this song, you're going to have to buy the MP6 version. BS, I say to that. I say if I paid good money for it and it's digital, that's not even a physical thing. I have the license to it and I should be able to play it in perpetuity.
And you can't expect them to be on the hook for that forever, but at that point, you are allowed to then take it into your own hands on how you continue to consume that thing, and that's
where we get into the emulation aspect.
And now that's a little bit away. That's emulation versus piracy. Piracy is still in that particular conversation. Piracy is still obviously very wrong, and I think we've all agreed that, especially at least on paper, piracy is wrong, if not even morally for most scenarios. But yeah, I'm with Sean. Like I think I'm with Sean. I think I'm with both of you. Like the preservation argument.
Sean's not going to entirely claim that he's with Sean, but this is a fun argument. I'm having a good time.
You asked earlier, well, what's the motivation behind the preservation part? Like, is it personal or not? And yeah, mostly it's personal. I want access to it. However that ends up looking like. Again, I'm not above paying for things. I dump thousands of dollars into this stupid hobby. Every stupid year I spend more and more. I have a problem. But I like free stuff too. I think there's got to be a balance somewhere in between. But philosophically, much like Jason, whether he's ever going to touch it again or not, he paid for that game and he wants it. I think we have a prerogative to preserve as much of it as we can that matters. And again, I think that should then be allowed, like people should be allowed to do that. If I want to preserve the Harvest Moon series long after its death and and Marvelous Entertainment has gone belly up 50 years from now, I should be allowed to do that. It shouldn't just sit in some like legal pit where no one can touch it because we got confused about who owns it until someone just comes up in one day and says like, I own it and I have enough money to say I do. And then it's like, okay, now you own it for the next 50 years or whatever. More control to people, shorter copyright law year limits. Like that's a totally different argument, but I think kind of
I agree with you. I think it ties in because
it does,
right now the hard part is it's like, because of the fragility, that's the right word of digital media. 75 years is way too long. Yeah, so a hard drive is dead well before 75 years shows up. So you need something that's short enough that this thing is able to enter the public domain, so that the general population that has an interest in this stuff can start taking care of it before it becomes impossible to do it, or you had to do it so early that it was no longer it's not considered legal.
Yeah, I mean you're right from a personal perspective, but it's so easy to throw stuff up on the internet and let Amazon take care of your storage needs. And while, eventually technically their servers will die out, they have so much redundancy to the point where as long as Amazon doesn't die, or as long as Google and Microsoft and the Azure and AWS, all that stuff continues to survive, or some form of it, if they sell the server space to some other company or whatever, it will exist in perpetuity. As long as someone had the decent, or had the sense to back it up to the cloud, quote unquote, that stuff's never going anywhere. Again, it has to be maintained to some degree, but from a hardware perspective, there's so much backup and like prevention from losing stuff, it'll never go anywhere. Yes, personally, if I had a hard drive and I always have to be making sure that I will eventually lose things. Something will happen to that hard drive, a backup will fail, or the drive will die early and I wasn't expecting it, and I could lose one or all of my library if it's just me, Karch, trying to play, hoarder with my digital content. But still, shorter years on IP and stuff. Force people to stop. Just stop. Like stop.
Just stop.
Stop
if
having.
I buy it, I own it forever.
Exactly. And just one dumb little example, because I wrote it and it's been talked about in the Twitter sphere and other places, like Metroid 5, Metroid Dread coming out in October. Awesome. Why call something 5 if you can't play any version of it like easily or legally? It's on like a lot of them are on the Wii U, and there's one on the 3DS. 3DS is no longer in production. The Wii U is no longer in production, and in January, at least in Japan, they're shutting it down. And it's like, why did you put this game out in the first place? You can play Super Metroid, the original. Okay, so you can play 3 of them technically. Although I don't. Can you play the Game Boy one? No, because they don't have a stupid Game Boy player. Why don't they have a Game Boy player? Oh my gosh.
Yeah, this is just gonna ramp me up, man. It's just gonna I can't talk about this rationally because I'm so pro consumer, and I can't do it. I can't do it.
And that's just, to me, in the last general thing I'll say about it, and then we can, I'll give you guys the floor too. Is like, to me, it's just a common sense thing. It sounds like an illusion. It sounds like this desperate need for control, this loss of opportunity costs. It's just this constant game of like, what could this be worth? And the Scrooge McDuck money eyes go crazy. And it's just that over and over and over again. And if we could just let go of some of this stuff and use all those billions you're making, and just kind of like, even if you're the only one preserving it, it'd be nice to know that you at least had it under control. And then maybe one day you'll release it to all of us. But at the very least, we know it's not like gone, as some stuff has been lost. Yeah. As far as source code and stuff, a lot, actually. That is definitely very true. Sean, final thoughts.
Yeah, I agree with your general points here. I mean, yes, I think a lot of what holds this up is twofold. Is one, is they think we got to hold on to this stuff because we either think we can make money on it later, or we think if we let it get out, it'll cost us money. Yeah. The other flip side too is preservation cost is a cost without a revenue stream.
True.
So the companies themselves are never going to do it, which is why things like the Library of Congress exists as kind of this public good idea. So I think gaming needs that as if there's going to be something of the same vein, if there's going to be a way to preserve this stuff. Now part of that is because I disagree. I think even if you put something on the Amazon cloud, we're going to eventually find as a lot of stuff has occurred on the internet, is just gone. There's plenty on the internet that is gone and you can't find it anymore.
True.
And then from a personal standpoint, like I said, this just doesn't mean a lot to me. I play games and I get my fill of a game, and if I can't go back and play it, I'm sure I'll be perturbed, but it really doesn't make a difference to me. And so, as far as wanting emulation and wanting it to be easier and more exist for my own good, I don't really care. But I do think we've seen phenomenal stories. We spent obviously the first 20 minutes of this podcast talking about the Mass Effect series, which is some of the best storytelling in gaming. Up until this point, and it'd be a tragedy to lose that beautiful example of storytelling, the same way that it would be a tragedy if we lost the Odyssey.
Well said. Jason.
First they came for the Mel Gibson fan, and I did not protest, for I was not a Mel Gibson fan, because I hated Braveheart, and I thought that Daddy's Home Part 2 was better. I'm just saying, for the greater good of mankind, I think we need to agree that if you pay for something digitally, you should own it in perpetuity. And I understand that if I buy a slice of cheese and I hold on to it for 10 years, it's probably not going to be great, but at least I still own that disgusting mold. And I just feel like
I'm
that
not,
should extend.
I'm not even
the-
arguing with you on the other side. I just think it's a moot point.
I'm
not saying that you should pay every 10 years. You should have to pay again to keep playing a game. I'm just saying it just doesn't matter.
No, that pains me. You're so anti-consumer.
He's anti-cheese
with
is what
that.
he is. He's anti-cheese.
He's anti-Mel Gibson, really, at the core of it. That's all I have to say. That's all I have to say is that if I pay for something, I feel like I should own it. Period. And it cannot be up to chance that if a company decides it's not worth it to them, then it's not worth it to me. I don't want to give them that choice. I need it to be my choice. I paid for it. It's not their choice. They gave it to me. I paid them for it. So I'm just saying, like, if I paid for an airline ticket and I showed up on the day of the flight and they were just like, we're not doing this anymore. It's not worth it. I'm like, guys,
except they do that.
They do that.
They do, and they shouldn't be allowed to. And I hate everything.
Correct.
Anyway, I'm okay. Too amped up if I have this. Is that all we have to say about this topic?
That's all I got.
Okay. Well, then I will just say, later, skater. I love this podcast. I love video games more than Sean, and I love you too, lovely and appers. That is all we have for you this week. You have a fantastic week. We will try, but we are never free to play.
I love those movies, except I haven't
How
seen
could
all
you
of Lethal
lead out
Weapons.
the Road Warrior?
Did
man?
you say
What's
what
wrong with
women
you?
want?
Yeah.
Good. I'm just making sure because that movie's awesome, even if it is dated.
The Patriot. I'm just looking up now because I don't remember.
I like The Patriot better
that's-
than Braveheart.
Oh my God! Get
I could
out
see
of
that.
here!
I could see that.
Braveheart's too long.
You can see that? That's
America,
what?
man.